Hey everybody, this is Shawn.
This is Braden.
This is a quick ad here before we start our show. Yes, we got to pay the bills too, and we're fortunate to have a couple sponsors. And and one of them is a t-shirt giveaway from the Guitar Repair Center. This guy's the best. I've been using him for a long time. So go to our Facebook page, the Psychology of Lickage Facebook page. Go share and like the t-shirt giveaway post. And we're going to be announcing that in a couple weeks. And what's the other thing? We got vintage and rare guitars that we're selling.
Yeah.
We become brokers now. Yeah. So what's the guitar of the week? What's the one this week?
So the guitar of the week this week is the Homer Haynes limited edition Stratocaster, built in 1988, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's a run of 300, and it's almost got like a gold color to it.
Oh yeah, it's just beautiful. It's modeled around the 57 Strat. They're very rare. It was one of the first Fender custom shop guitars built. So if you want to find out more, go to the Facebook post. You'll see a picture of it, or I think you'll put it up on Instagram as well, right?
It'll be on Instagram too.
Yeah, go check it out. And on with the show.
Hi, this is Shawn Meehan.
This is Braden Williams,
And you're listening to
The Psychology
of Lickage.
Wow, what episode is this? We're back for episode number 7.
This is already 7. That's almost 2 months.
Incredible, eh?
Yeah.
I know. This quarantine this pandemic has kind of worked in our favor, hasn't it?
It really has. It's made us super productive.
Yeah. When everyone else was productive, we weren't as productive.
Yeah.
No, but
now it's time to take some stuff seriously.
Yeah, exactly. But no. I mean, again, the podcast was always something we talked about, but we were so busy, and now we have this time. So and great. But our next guest is a friend of yours.
Yeah,
she's a high school friend, isn't she? Or you've known her for a while?
No, I just met her.
Introduce her.
Yeah. So this is Ayla Tesler-Mabe. I believe I'm pronouncing her name right.
Sorry if he's not.
Yeah. And so here is her bio. So here we go. Driven by a deep and true passion for music and creativity, Ayla has developed into a professional guitarist, vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, and composer, gathering millions of views on her YouTube and Instagram videos from people all over the world. A member of the Ernie Ball and Music Man family, a Fender artist, and a recipient of multiple scholarships to the Berklee College of Music, as well as various endorsements from other respected musical suppliers, Ayla continues to develop her craft, original songs, and sound while participating in various musical projects. Ayla is a part of Ludic, a funk, jazz, soul, and blues trio with brothers Max and Rhett Cunningham.
Wow. Jesus.
Quite the bio. It really is, yeah.
And it was quite the conversation. She's we'll get into that later. We'll comment at the end, but let's just go right to the conversation and have a listen. This was a great chat. I hope you guys stick around and listen to it. You'll love it.
Here we go. All right, here we have Ayla Tesler-Mabe.
Hello.
How's the quarantine treating you, Ayla?
Oh, quarantine has been very, very kind to me, of course.
Yeah.
Very nice person. Yeah. No, that's not what I meant to say. Sorry. No, it's okay. To be completely honest, my daily routine really is quite similar to the way it's been for the past year. I have been social distancing for a long time, frankly, you know. But obviously, I think, given the circumstances, it is, of course, a difficult time to be in, and I feel really deeply for those who are really affected by what's going on. And I think that's sort of what's been on my mind more so than the way I'm affected is, I guess, the way other people have been affected.
Yeah, I know. I haven't checked the numbers in the U.S., but apparently it's going up pretty high.
Yeah, and it's pretty scary. And it's also so jarring when... And I was talking to my friend the other day, who obviously is in university right now, and a month ago, or even a few weeks ago, no one could have really predicted that this is the way that the next, period of time.
Yeah, I know it happens so fast too
for us, and
yeah.
Well, it seems that us guitar players, don't have a problem with social distancing. Isn't that essentially what we do?
No one wants to see us anyway.
Yeah.
That's how you build technical ability on the guitar. You have to be socially distancing.
That's right.
Yeah.
You gotta, we've talked about that. We talked about that in other episodes where, hey, this is a good question, Braden, is the woodshedding period. Some people do it all the time. Some people, it comes in phases. It comes in phases for me. How about you? Are you constantly woodshedding, or does it come in phases for you?
That's a really good question. I would say that woodshedding is always on my mind in some way. Like, I'm always thinking about music and the ways in which I could be improving and just trying to set all of these goals for myself. Like, I feel like every time I listen to a song that I really love, I'm thinking to myself, what can I take from this song and learn from it? Yeah. And so that's sort of on my mind. But obviously, I have particular weeks or months where I'm really into specific technical things that I really want to be working on. And I don't mean technical as in like sitting there at the metronome and like playing 16th notes over and over again as fast as I can. But I mean, I guess sort of locking myself away with very, very specific goals in mind. Like, I'd like to be able to understand the modes of double harmonic major better than I do right now. And that's sort of like a weird zone I'll be in at a given moment, and it sort of comes and goes,
Yeah.
Be like water.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yes.
Be like water.
Is there any particular artist that you've gone through like a massive phase over the past like 5 years, say?
Ooh, well, obviously the classics like Stevie Wonder, of course. I mean, I think I'll be in a Stevie Wonder phase for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think all of us.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously the Jimi Hendrix experience, and obviously him with the band of Gypsies. And I don't want to say it's not so much about the band and more about him, but it's more about him and not so much about the band that he was playing in at the time. So,
well, Shawn, were you saying that sometimes he like Jimi Hendrix would play the bass parts and stuff?
Oh yeah, there's these. Apparently, what he would do was they go. Was it Noel Redding that played bass? Was he
experience.
Yeah, he was a Russian. He was an Irish guy, right? And he loved to hang out in the pub. So Hendrix would let him do all his parts and whatever. And he'd go, "Oh, sounds great." And he'd give him a little bit of money, go to the local pub, and then he'd go in and ghost all his bass parts and stuff. And apparently, there's a legendary myth of that. And it's probably, if you go back and listen, it's probably likely. But
I mean, that was a huge thing that was taking place. I mean, it probably still happens now, but I can think of so many bands like in the 60s and 70s, and especially, with all of those amazing session players out there who, like all these artists who probably had no idea that their parts were being replaced when they left the studio by other people.
For sure. Well, you got to think
the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, exactly. The Wrecking Crew probably played almost those records, But yeah, it's you got to think too. I think studio was very new in the 50s. Well, it was brand new in the 50s. Well, it existed before, but I think it's a little different now. Or even a little different in the last 20, 30 years than it was 50 years ago. Is you kind of grew up knowing that you had to play in the studio or figuring out how to play in the studio. And I think in that time period they didn't. They just jangled away through some songs in their dad's garage, and then all of a sudden they were young with a song, and you got to think at that point everything was studio playing up to that point, right? You had all these sort of jazz bands and that sort of thing, whereas all these house guys, these session guys, would just sit there, and whoever came through, Billie Holiday or whoever was coming through, was just playing to the house studio band. And then all of a sudden you get these guys forming their band. That was actually kind of foreign, sort of young guys from the suburbs, young guys and gals, mostly guys at that point, I guess, which we can talk about. That's kind of one thing I want to talk to you about. But yeah, so anyways, it's a little more expected of a younger player like you to be able to play in the studio than I think it was in the 60s and 70s. It could be wrong, but that's what it seems like, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Interesting. Yeah. So,
do you want to kind of go through? Sorry, Shawn, I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna ask.
No, go ahead. Do
you want to go through kind of like your history, like where you started? What kind of got you started with the guitar, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing that happened was I was born on March 7th, 2001. That was the first step, I suppose, in my musical journey. I don't believe any of this would have happened had that event not sort of precipitated everything that was to follow.
Fair point.
Yeah, fair point. You know, she brings up a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. It has to start somewhere.
Yeah, well, there we go. So that happened, and then fast forward a few years, and I was playing the video game Rock Band with my brother, and loving it. I think that's sort of where I fell in love with music, and I guess my brother in particular really started showing he had a inherent skill in music and art in general, and he was singing and he had a beautiful voice, and my parents heard that and they're like, wow, he has a beautiful voice, let's put him in singing lessons. And then I guess Ayla can also maybe have singing lessons if she wants, just as an afterthought sort of thing. And so I ended up with a few singing lessons when I was younger, and I really enjoyed it. I truthfully didn't take them very seriously or practice much or anything like that, but obviously music was always something that I really deeply loved before I even realized it. But then what happened was I discovered the Beatles, and that to me was almost as monumental an event as me being born, to be honest. And so
you were born again?
I was born again.
Born again
at
Beatles.
the age of 8. Yeah. So that happened, and it really changed everything for me. And that's when I actually knew that I wanted to be a musician, even though I didn't actually know how to play any instruments really or anything like that. I just knew. I loved everything about the Beatles, and I still do. And basically, I told this to my parents that I really wanted to play an instrument. And they were so kind, and they got me just a cheap little guitar starter pack. I took a lesson. I hated it. Moved on. I was 8 years old. I was running around the playground having a good time. I wasn't thinking about structure and discipline, and so but that did sort of start me on a journey of exploring other instruments, and that is actually when I started playing the cello. And
You play the cello?
really loved the cello, and I still do. I unfortunately haven't played it in a while.
Oh.
I would love to pick up a cello again, and had this current...
Uh-oh. I think we lost her.
Uh-oh, we lost her.
Oh
Yeah.
my god,
there we go.
Siri just popped up. Why?
Oh,
Why
there we
would
go.
I want Siri right now? I don't even have Siri enabled on my phone. I don't understand.
Oh, weird.
Well, the spirits
That's okay.
are really trying to interfere with this call. I'm sorry.
She wants in. She heard about us.
Yeah. Don't worry, Siri. You'll be on soon.
Don't worry. We'll eventually get... we run out of guests.
There we go. Yeah, so I'll continue. Is that on my phone right now? Is my phone playing a song right now? What is happening? I'm so confused. Wait, did you hear that on your end?
No, we're not hearing
Okay,
anything.
well,
No.
Crazy by... is this Charles Barkley or is it Gnarls Barkley?
I don't know.
Anyways, that song just started playing out of nowhere. I don't even know if I have that song downloaded on my phone. I'm really confused.
Now we have 2 new guests.
And frankly, yeah, I need to tame my phone. Well, anyways, I'll continue, and I'm excited to see what the next interruption will be.
There you
That's
go.
what I'm saying. But anyways, yes, I started playing the cello. I loved it. And recently I really wanted to go rent a cello again, and so I could get back into it, because I'm just in love with that instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously,
awesome.
I'm at home, and that's not so much of a possibility at the moment. But yeah, anyways, I love the cello, and I was enjoying it a lot. But then, as my love for the Beatles and guitar-driven music grew, I found that I was turning my cello on its side and trying to play it like a bass, I guess, at the time. And I guess that to me was a significant clue that I should be, considering exploring the bass, which is what I did when I was, I guess, 10 years old. That's when 9 or 10, I started playing the bass, and I loved it. And the first bass I bought was a Paul McCartney, Hofner knockoff, which I still have.
Yeah.
And it still
cool.
sounds really cool. And I would show up to all of the jazz band rehearsals with this Beatles bass, and my band teacher, who's like he was my favorite teacher on the planet, and still is, just a wonderful, wonderful person. He would look at me and he'd be like, I love your playing, but like, why did you choose that bass? What are you doing? It's so out of place. And I'm like, yeah, good point. But I'm passionate about the music I'm passionate about. I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize for that. And so I was playing the bass and I really enjoyed it. And I was playing with the school jazz band. And funnily enough, I was this teeny little 6th grader playing with the like grade 11s and 12s when their bass player couldn't make it because he was a basketball guy. And my school was so small, they had no one else between grade 6 or 12 they could choose. So I was second up to that. But I mean, obviously, it was such a great experience to be thrown in with people who knew so much more than me. And that's an experience I've sort of had throughout my life, where I'm so fortunate when I'm in experiences that I know I'm in way over my head. And the kind of growth that comes from that is just...
Yeah, definitely.
It's just wonderful. Nothing like it.
Pat Metheny, the great Pat Metheny guitar player. Do you guys know who Pat Metheny is?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
of course, I love him. I steal lots of his licks.
Okay, good, because I'm from a different generation, and it's like sometimes I'll bring up players and people go, who, what, huh? But anyways, he had a great quote, and I try to live by this one: is always try to be the worst player in the band, and that's how you'll grow. That's how you'll.
Yeah.
I think you put it a little more elegantly than I'm saying it, but basically, be the least experienced player in the band. Be surrounded by great players, and you'll always, you're forced to step it up. So that's an interesting observation that you've put out there.
Yeah. I mean, if your ego can take it, I think that's the best way to just grow. And you look back and you think, wow, I never would have learned this, or I would never have gotten this far had I been surrounded by people who made me feel like I was actually good enough. That sort of phenomenon is so, I think, crucial to pushing yourself as a musician and all that. And also, just to flash back to the past, I'm reading a book right now with lots of flashbacks, so I'm going to speak in flashbacks. We're in the present, now I'm going to flash right back to when I was playing the bass. When I was 12,
We're going to call this episode Flashback. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, perfect. That's
Ayla,
perfect.
Flashback.
Very dramatic, but
there you go.
Perfect name. But yeah, basically, I, at that time, started playing with these cool friends of mine that I had met through some music programs in the city, in this Led Zeppelin cover band that played at the art gallery a few times, which was such a cool experience. And so
awesome.
I remember spending hours and hours and hours and hours just listening to these songs over and over again, trying to pick apart everything that John Paul Jones was doing. Like, I tried to nail every little nuance. Like, if he slid up to a note, you best believe I'd be sliding up to that note. It had to be exactly the same, which I now realize is completely unnecessary. But obviously, great exercise. And that was so much fun. But throughout that whole experience, I would be looking over at the guitar player kind of longingly, like, wow, I feel like that's what I should be doing. And so that's what I did when I was 12. Finally, I dusted off that cheap guitar that barely worked. And oh my God, Charles Barkley is playing again. Oh wow!
Back to the present.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I don't even understand what's happening, but hey, it's fun.
Yeah, it makes this conversation more entertaining.
Yeah.
Of course, the spirits are trying to get their word into.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought of a question here while you're chatting. I went and checked you out, and I noticed you're really good at playing by yourself. You know what I mean? Like and that's a whole art in itself. I know I've played with some great players and go ask them to play by themselves for 3 minutes, and it just doesn't work. But they're great with playing with a band or whatever.
Yeah.
And just to put it mildly, but I know. Do you think sort of you're wanting to play bass early on, and did that affect sort of the way you play, having good timing, or was it other things that caused that to make you a good sort of solo player, let's call it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'd say definitely.
You got to flash back on this one. You got to flash back.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Sometimes the flashback isn't immediate. That's why you're hearing me stalling a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I suppose going into playing the guitar, having started on the bass, definitely, I think, allowed me to start building from a foundation that was very groove-oriented, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That being said, a lot of the bass players that I was looking up to at that time, I think, were more melody-driven than someone like, James Jamerson or, like a classic old-school funk player. Because, like Paul McCartney and John Paul Jones, in many instances, were playing the bass like a lead instrument. So, I mean, it is...
Yeah.
It is very different, I guess, in that regard, that style of bass playing. But I guess, the groove was sort of where I started from, and is obviously such an important part of music, without a doubt.
Yeah, no kidding.
I guess what it sort of has helped me discover, which is relevant to playing on your own, is being able to find the groove even without any other players there. It's like, where can you find that source of groove when there's no one else playing? Mm-hmm. And I guess it's challenging, but I guess that's sort of where it comes from. And also, I will say, because this needs to come up at some point, that a large part of that, though it's kind of counterintuitive, was learning how to play, without a doubt, with other people. For example, Braden. Yes. I mean, Braden is someone who I think is a huge part of my story, because I remember for years and years, I'd go as often as possible. Like sometimes I'd go every week down to White Rock to this jam that my mentor Sammy would put on. And I remember Braden was there, and he was just the most impressive guitar player I'd seen, because he was so young and obviously like so technical and blah blah. It's great, but like so much feel in his playing. Yeah. And I had never really encountered a young person who was like channeling that much feeling into their playing, and I stole so many licks from him, and it was great, and we've jammed together so many times. But yeah, that for me was a huge part of my development, like throughout my younger teenage years for sure, and obviously.
Well, you talked about earlier about allowing your ego to put yourself in experiences. Now, Braden is literally over half my age, and when there's still moments when we play together. And our drummer is he's a fantastic drummer. He's an older guy. He's very experienced. He's played with a lot of great blues players, on and on and on. And there's still moments in rehearsal where my drummer and I will look at each other, and Braden's he's played that same lick, whatever, we're rehearsing, we're playing the same stuff over and over again, but he'll just play a lick a certain way, and we'll just look at each other, and Jesus, Braden doesn't stop to amaze me. He seriously is what I'm gonna make you blush now. Good thing this isn't a video, but he really is. You just nailed why I'm a huge fan of his, and what I look for when I listen, or what I like, I guess, when I'm listening to players, is feel. And it's what I enjoyed when I saw you play too. I checked out the videos and stuff, and I went, wow, this girl has some feel. And at the end of the day, isn't that the most important thing? I think. I mean, this is, after all, called the psychology of lickage, and I think psychologically, I think when people react to music, I think it's more about the feel, not necessarily how many, you were mentioning earlier how quickly you can play 16th notes to a metronome or whatever. So
absolutely. I mean, I could go on and on about, I think, how ultimately everything is just about serving the emotion of the song. Absolutely. Or one's playing or whatever it is. And I think for me, watching Braden play and then seeing other people playing and like comparing other people's playing, like that, to me early on, having the ability to highlight the profound difference it makes when someone isn't just playing a note for the sake of playing it, but like with the intention of expressing something, like that to me. So thank you, Braden, for allowing me to just see so early on the difference between, playing like it's the last note you'll ever play versus, playing that flashy lick just because you want to impress the person in the audience who has a nice smile or whatever.
I just had a flashback. We chatted the other night with a guy named Morris O'Connor, who plays for Earth, Wind and Fire, and Stevie Wonder, all these guys. What a fantastic guy, and he said the exact same thing you just said. I'm having a flashback. He said, go up. Well, almost the same. Go up there like it's the last time you're going to play every time.
Yeah.
Go up there and that is so important. That I think if young players are listening to this right now, if you learn anything from this podcast, go up whenever you perform. It's the last time you're going to perform. Yeah. And boy, you don't look at it much differently than just well, whatever, and we'll just go up here and play. I've always had that sort of philosophy. Play like your life depends on it, because I always say mine does. I need to express, and I'm sure. That actually leads me to another question. How do you? I ask this question differently with everyone, but for me, playing music and growing up, it saved my life. There's no doubt about it. It set me on the right path, or kept me on the right path, and so I could never see music. I could never see my life without music. Do you feel the same way, or could you take it or leave it?
Oh no, I could not take it or leave it.
Exactly.
And obviously, it's something that I think so many musicians relate to, because let's think about it logically. Why would you go into a career where it is so difficult to make a living? You have to put yourself out there every night, whether you're playing to a huge stadium or just, a little restaurant around the city. Like, you are literally commoditizing your self-expression. Really, it's beautiful, but it's also really difficult, on one's like psychological well-being, to be honest. But the reason everyone does it, because it defies all logic to do so, is because it's this passion that, like, you can't imagine yourself doing anything else.
Absolutely. So, you cannot. You can't imagine yourself. I feel the same way. I can tell you do. Obviously, you just responded that. But it's so true, though. I think you guys, I'm going to completely date myself, and it might even make you laugh. But Nikki Sixx, bass player for Motley Crue, he had the greatest quote when people ask him about the business. If you can see yourself for 1 second doing anything else, get out now. You won't survive. It's too hard. And I thought, that's so true. And I've never been able to see myself do anything else. So it's like, oh, well, I guess we forge on.
That's actually an amazing quote. And I find it so funny that it comes from him specifically, because obviously Motley Crue is
I know, but he's a lot smarter than he lets on. You know what I mean? I think that's sure. He's a world-class songwriter. He wrote all those songs. I mean, you can, I know sometimes I've ran into, I try to keep an open mind to all music. I try to see the best. What is it that makes this band great? How do they, whether I like that style of music or not, I try to go, what is it that made it great, or why did people respond to it, or whatever? And he's a very actually profound guy. He's a very, but it's hard to see that when you watch those videos or you watch the movie. You go, okay.
Yeah. But that's just the thing. Like, I never would look at someone like that and say, oh, this person doesn't have depth, or they're not totally killing it at what they're doing. Because look at the success, right? Like, I always find that there's something to respect from every person who is passionate about what they're doing and doing it. And it's true. I find that a lot of the guys in especially that hair metal era who have like the trashy image there's a lot more behind it than that image that they were putting on. And I think it's because they're smart enough to know the power of creating that image. And
absolutely. Exactly. And you touched on something that I noticed from hanging out with Braden too, and we've talked about this with players that are more my age and stuff. It seems like when I was coming about, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff, believe it or not, guys, it might blow your mind, it was not cool at all to us. It was not cool at all. It was the shredder players and how fast you could play and how all this sort of stuff. And then but it seems with you guys' generation, there's this sort of discovery of all that old stuff. Like it's now, how you talked about discovering the Beatles, all that stuff. Was it because of your parents, or was it, how were you exposing yourself to music? How were you exposed to music when you discovered the Beatles and all that sort of thing? What is it that,
Yeah. Well,
this is a big question, I could tell.
Yeah. Oh,
another flashback.
Yeah. It's a loaded question. Well, music was always a huge part of my upbringing. Like, even though there weren't any like professional musicians in my family, I think everyone loves music. And like, I grew up with a lot of, Latin music just playing around the house all the time. And my parents really, you know what, I respect it. They like what they like a lot, especially my dad. Like, he's all about Journey, Foreigner, brings them back to the good old days. And you know what? Those songs are really fun.
Yeah.
I will always have a soft spot for, you know, Hot Blooded by Foreigner.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I just grew up in a family where everyone loved music a lot. And that, to me, just showed the power of loving music. And it was sort of that combined with playing rock band with my brother, which obviously sort of takes you through a history of rock and roll music, you know.
Yeah,
and that sort of exposed me to so much music. And it was so interesting to compare that music to the music that I was hearing on the radio back in the day when people used to listen to the radio. And just sort of comparing almost the freedom that was sort of being channeled in that older rock music versus the kind of music that I was hearing on the radio at the time, which seemed to almost be suppressing that part of
that's a great observation.
Expression.
Yeah, because you would have come up, like, say, sort of late 2000, like, you're born in 2001, correct? So,
yes,
you know, like 2010, it's a lot of sort of, it's true.
LMFAO, EDM.
Yeah. Super, I don't want to say shallow, but super,
Shallow.
I don't know. Yeah, shallow. There you go.
Lack of depth.
I was a lack of depth. I was trying to be nice about it, but yeah, no.
There you go. You didn't say it. I did.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. But yeah, no, you're right. I've always often wondered about that. But yeah, see, there was no guitar, hero or whatever. There was only the guitar heroes. You know, there was Eddie Van Halen and all that. I had to do it, Braden. I brought up Eddie Van Halen on the podcast. I found my moment. But
yes.
Now let's talk about him. I gotta ask. Did those kind of players influence you? Did Eddie Van Halen influence you at any point? Did he ever cross your path?
Sean's a huge fan.
Or was it? Yeah,
we need to know about Eddie Van Halen.
We do.
Well,
we have to.
Here's the thing, and this will be an interesting segue from the last point I was making. Just sort of, there's always been music about sort of the more, I guess, quote unquote, shallow parts of the human existence, partying and party culture and all that. The difference, I'd say, though, and it's interesting because Van Halen to me has always been a band that definitely played into that sort of like raunchy crotch rock kind of world. Like, this is Spinal Tap. Totally. That whole culture. But I'd say that kind of music, but I'd say particularly that kind of music in the 60s and earlier 70s, because obviously I think there's sort of been a shift in the way that sort of music has been written. But it definitely, like, there have always been those kinds of songs, but it was probably more so about a celebration of life as opposed to flaunting your dollar bills and your nice car and whatever. And like, obviously that's sort of, now that I'm thinking about it, this is interesting. That's sort of really shifted almost consistently throughout the ages, where it's sort of by the time you got to Motley Crue and a little bit before that, I guess Van Halen, like people were sort of moving in that direction already, so you can see where it came from. But I mean, that being said, Van Halen, the first record, and I'm not just saying just the first record, but in particular the first record, I think really it rules. Like it holds
totally.
up,
Absolutely.
And the guitar playing is just it was groundbreaking, and that's always something that you have to respect. And I think that I mean, obviously when I first heard Eruption particularly, I was like, you can do that with the guitar? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. And I mean, it's funny, no one really talks enough.
I've even just become more of a... No, it's okay. I was just going to elaborate on that. I've even become more of a fan of you right now, just from listening, just from hearing you say that. Because I felt the exact same way. Because,
that's cool. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Making fans.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, and also I find it interesting that no one talks enough about I'm the One off of that same album, which arguably is more impressive in terms of the guitar work. I mean, it's a really fun type of music, and obviously Eddie Van Halen, I think so many people owe what they do to him. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
but you
super
touched
cool
on
song.
you touched on something. You absolutely you touched on something. You know, the reason why I was a kid during that era, and the reason why I just dated myself. But anyways, the reason why I felt, to me, they stood out. I wasn't really a big fan of the rest of the bands. I wasn't a Motley Crue fan at the time. I wasn't. For me, I felt the same way as what you're talking about. It was all shallow, and it's just this is so dumb, but really, if you dig into Eddie Van Halen's past, they were brought up by a very strict mother who regimented them early with the piano. Their dad was a jazz musician, and you hear it in their music. You can hear it. Like if you step up to the 1984 album, go listen to some of the album tracks on that. There, and I have yet to hear a band, even a very proficient cover band, cover their songs properly, because it's about the feel, it's about the one, it's about all these things that you have to be a very proficient musician to even understand. So that's why for me, I didn't get into them for the songs or anything. I just loved, I loved that they were a blend of sort of hard rock metal or whatever you want to call it, and jazz and blues, and they brought it to the table, and nobody else did that. And that's sort of so they and I was going to say, David Lee Roth, I saw an interview with him recently, and he said, we're not an 80s band. We're a 70s band. We grew up in the 70s. We learned in the 70s. So they actually are more influenced by the kind of music you guys are into. And I am too, but I mean the stuff that influenced you guys as kids. Yeah. And they were a little bit older than the rest of the bands throughout the 80s too, right? So they were kind of... So anyways, I just thought I'd elaborate on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like it's the same thing as the Rolling Stones. Like even though they released Tattoo You, I think in like 1980, it's still... not an 80s record to me.
No,
like the production, the songwriting sensibilities, like the guitar tone, everything it's screaming 60s, 70s. And I think Van Halen, obviously, even though they were releasing music in the 80s, definitely always has had that 70s sound to them, for sure.
Well, they were a 70s band that got past their first two or three records, basically. Like a lot of bands never got past they'd signed 3 record deals, and if you weren't developed by the 3rd record, then they moved on, right, in that world. And back then, and they were one of the few that survived. That's all, basically. So, but anyways, let's. I guess we're a little. We do have someone else waiting for us, but this chat is so good. I didn't want to stop it, and I don't want to stop it.
I can tell the guy.
Braden, do you have anything else you want to ask before we?
Well, we didn't really talk about.
Unfortunately,
we didn't really talk about Ayla's current band. Which
there we go.
I'm
what a great way to end it.
Yeah, I'm a massive.
Tell us more about that.
I'm a massive fan. So go ahead.
Oh, wow. Wait, should I just talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Okay,
go for it.
All right.
I think you made her speechless there for a second, Braden.
Yeah, it's true. I was just thinking, like, this guy works in my band? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I've met those two brothers, Max and Rhett, at the exact same place where I met Braden, at that awesome little restaurant, bar, and grill, right overlooking the pier in White Rock. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful place, especially in the summer as the sun is setting. Yeah. And I found two people who share in my unquestioning love for music, and they bring sides of my musicality and artistry out that I'm really grateful for, because obviously my own, when I'm writing on my own, like the 70s influence, the 60s influence, like that is so much a part of what I do. Yeah. And that'll never change, I think. Yeah. But with them, they are so into like modern sounds and production, which I definitely am as well. Like I love a lot of music coming out now, but I think they are even further into that than me. So then it's like the coming together of what is current and what was amazing about the music that's come out, decades ago. It's like picking the best of all of the music you hear and just throwing it all together. And then that's why it almost doesn't really fit a genre. And I find it so exciting that we're writing music that truthfully, I don't know what genre it is. Like, I have no idea. Like, I hear little bits of Motown influence because I know that we were citing a particular Motown style at that moment. And then I also hear that we've use some 90s drum samples, and that we're using a J Dilla sampler, but then at the same time we're processing the vocals through, you know, like a modern sort of plug-in. And we found also, just by chance, the best possible producer who, I mean, he reached out to us first, actually, which was amazing, because we were planning to do it ourselves. And then, bless the heavens, Ryan Morsley reached out to us, who is just the coolest producer I've ever encountered, and like totally gets our vision and totally loves, you know, a lot of the same old school influences as well as a lot of the modern sounds, and then just throwing it all together.
Cool.
You get Ludic, and it's a bit of everything.
I just listened to your you just released the Stevie Wonder cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
We sure did.
That was awesome. Was that all live on the floor?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, well, it's funny, we recorded it so long ago, and then just a lot of things happened and the video didn't end up coming out until now. But yeah, I mean, that's a cover we've sort of developed over a long period of time, just playing it at shows, and sort of developed into what it is now. You know, with a few just a few subtle reharmonization moments and a few I guess the ending is obviously very clearly not Stevie Wonder, and we just took the opportunity, because I mean, when you play a song like that, you almost feel like you never want it to end. Yeah. So we add just a huge jam section at the end.
Yeah, it's like a 5-minute solo.
Celebrate the majesty of Stevie Wonder. That's what it's all about. The whole song is to celebrate Stevie Wonder. I never want anyone to think that I'm playing a guitar solo in that song just for the sake of it. It's me trying to, through my guitar notes, say, "Hey, Stevie, thank you."
Well, what a great way to end this.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Ayla. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and
I really enjoyed.
You know, I hope we can do this again, because I feel like we should have slotted more time.
Yeah.
It's like, this is so we never know how these are going to go. Sometimes they go short, and other times you just want to go forever because the conversation is just sparkling. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's really
cool.
I
really enjoyed speaking to both of you guys today, and I'm really just I love speaking to people who love music so much, and it's just so much fun. And
I think that's why this conversation can go forever.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to, you know, post-hardcore, you know, like screamo yet. Like we
almost got there. We got to the early '80s, and then
we have more to cover, guys.
Well, if you'll come back, we'd love to have you back. It's
sure.
You know, when you got some more time.
Awesome.
I'd
love to speak to you again sometime soon. Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks.
Awesome. You too. Take care.
Woo.
Cheers. Thanks, Ayla.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, what an amazing conversation, Braden. I'm so glad
really
you brought her in. Yeah, she's you know, just incredible. I couldn't believe that she was only 19 years old.
Yeah,
like,
I know. It's
to
incredible.
me, she sounded like you know, a 30-year-old Joni Mitchell or something. I was just like, you know, like she have it all together and got it dialed in, and unbelievable. I was, and then, you know, when the amount of exposure that she's built for herself is just incredible. Like some of her videos have 5 million views on them, and it was just I can't wait to chat with her. She'll come back. She's it felt like we're just getting started, actually.
I know.
but you know, so I guess you've known her, you know, she's kind of from your neighborhood, and
yeah. So we first met down at West Beach Bar and Grill, and she was just there. We were just there jamming or whatever, and I was just thinking, like, wow, she's incredible. Like at that point, I think she was like 15 years old, something like that, and it was it was so cool. And it, like, I mean, there was the part of me that was like, oh yeah, she's definitely gonna make it, but I had no idea she would get to this point. Like she's on the cover of like so many magazines, like, you know, in her bio it was talking about how she's got scholarships from Berkeley. It's like, it's incredible. Like she's just gone so far in the past, like, I don't know, 4 years. It's incredible.
Wow. And she's so humble about it too. Like she's very she's a very sort of, I would call her an old soul musician, like very, very she sounds like a much older musician, the way she talks about music and the way
definitely.
her outlook is.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I didn't know what to expect going into that conversation. And I came out, learning so much and just really enjoying her chat about music. And um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
she seems seasoned.
yeah, definitely.
My philosophy's been everyone is my teacher, and she was certainly my teacher in that conversation. So anyways, thank you for sticking around. I think it's been almost an hour now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to thank you guys for still supporting our
Yeah.
podcast. We're going to keep going as long as possible. We got lots more great guests coming up, that are sitting already in the vault recorded. And so, yeah, send us your suggestions, comment on our Facebook. And by the way, we still haven't given away the Guitar Repair Center t-shirts. Go like and share the post on Facebook.
Yeah.
Please leave us your comments about the show. And yeah, thanks again.
Hi, this is Shawn Meehan,
This is Braden Williams,
and you're listening to
The Psychology
of Lickage.